My name is Dan Breen, I'm the curator here. And it's a great honour to welcome you here tonight on what is a momentous occasion, not only in Jewish history in the city, but also for the museum's own history. For those of you who don't know, we're 81 years old this year. We celebrated our 80th anniversary last year. When I first joined here, I'm entering my 25th year here. So when I first came here, it would be fair to describe the museum, well, certainly up until the early 90s, as a Fianna Fáil museum. Its collections had a certain, hue, and it had a certain viewpoint in Irish history, and especially on Cork history. Under my predecessor Stella Cherry, who some of you may have known, who sadly passed away 6 years ago this year. But under her, she initiated a program in the museum of making the museum a place for everybody. It's not just for a certain political viewpoint, it's for everyone who's contributed or made Cork, the history of Cork, Cork City, what it is today. And one of the first groups that we formed a relationship with that is still going to this day is the travelling community. We have the only permanent traveller exhibition. We certainly had the first one, maybe there's one in Galway now, but we upstairs, and that's been running since 2005, so we're 21 years working with the travelling community. And that's been of enormous benefit to, obviously, giving a voice and a place for the travelling, especially the women of the travelling community, to show the work they do. But it's also been beneficial for the staff here because we've got to learn about them and to appreciate their experiences. And I think as any historian or any person who works in a museum, it's important that we have empathy and we understand as many points of view as we can, even if we don't agree with all of them. But we still, our job is to show as much as we can both sides. Since then, we've worked with not only the Cork Hebrew congregation under Claire Rosehill and the exhibition that's down below in our history gallery. We've also worked with the African community. We've also acquired the LGBTQ+ collection and hope we'll be launching an exhibition during Heritage Week, all going well this year, our first permanent LGBTQ+ exhibition. Tonight, I would like you to see it not only a celebration of Jewish heritage and the work that Ruti has put into gathering this history, but also a continuation and a confirmation that this museum is there for everybody. Our job is to tell the history of Cork City, good, bad and indifferent. As my old history teachers used to say, history is not black and white, it's full of grey. And most of Cork's history is no different to anywhere else. There's lots of grey flying around. Delighted to introduce the former Lord Mayor and great friend of the museum, Councillor Kieran McCarthy, to say a few words.
Dear Ruti, dear curator Dan Breen and your team, and dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a real great delight to be able to launch this research work, this really important piece of work. And there's a lot one can say, but I want to come at it maybe from 3 different angles, maybe just very, very briefly. I'd love to kind of roll in a massive slideshow and kind of to show you lots and lots of different things, but I want Ruti's voice to kind of to showcase what she's been working on. My first angle is just of deep praise for Ruti. Really deep praise. And I think your work as a researcher in history, the heritage and life of society, it is really important. And before us is this massive research project, which if I know there's many people here interested, but you can get the museum can send you the PDF of all of some of the work here, and you can talk to Ruti and so on, because I know some people here have what I call nuggets to give to Ruti as well, and she's really excited about that, I know. But before us is an 8-year research project, an 8-year. Imagine working on something for 8 years. It's a long time. Diving into what I call one of Cork's historical rabbit holes, and there are many rabbit holes in Cork history. I spend my life going down historical rabbit holes, and all my life I'm probably kind of given walking tours for like 33 years since I was a teenager, and I love kind of Cork and the different kind of historical challenges as well to research. But Ruti is, yes, a scholar, but a great researcher, writer, an inspiring guardian of memory, I have to say, a promoter of public heritage in terms of gathering you all together and going, well, let's do it together. But also, in particular, is someone who cares enough to listen. And to reflect and to explore the stories and the materials, on the stories and materials that could be described as nostalgic currency, like things that we transact, we tell these stories, and that nostalgia kind of is important. Collecting the voices, memories and narratives of older generations, that's not an easy task. If you speak to someone and you say to someone who's 80 years old, tell me your life story, you're going to be there for a while, especially someone who was really, really active. And that's not an easy task, even though the task is important to record. And also remembering is just bound up with so much emotion. Like if you stand in front of someone, you go, tell me your story, even though somewhere along the line they're going to break down crying, somewhere along the line they're going to start laughing, somewhere along the line they're going to get really angry about something, and it's kind of mixed emotions. And so Ruti has a great way about her to kind of to draw out some of those emotions and try to tease out the stories as well. It is a very hard task as well to turn around and reassemble the voices, memories and narratives into the research project as well. That so much was presented to you. And so much will continue to be presented to you as well, kind of into the future. I know this has been a labour of love, and you're in terms of breathing life back into the storyboard of life and society and history and heritage of areas like Jewtown and the South Terrace and kind of further afield within Cork City as well, and beyond, kind of into the county. My dear friends, let me kind of conclude my three angles or my three messages. One is of deep praise to Ruti. Congratulations, and give her a round of applause. My second thing is thanks so much for the punch in the heart to all of us, and the emotions around what you're trying to collect, what you're trying to do as well is really, really important, and that stories do matter. And if you don't believe me, have a look at what Ruti is kind of working at. You can see there's some of the material is here, it's just words on a page. I know Ruti wants to publish a book. And there's an onus on us to try to help her to do that as well, to publish what she's actually found. And then the third aspect, in terms of reconstructing the sense of place in our present-day docklands and future docklands, is really important. With that, I'd like to formally open the exhibition.
Thank you all for coming here today, and welcome to Cork Public Museum. We're honoured to have you here with us. But most of all, thank you to Ruti for doing such fantastic work, and also for doing us the honour to preserve it and safekeep it for future generations. I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about how I met Ruti and how this all began. It was about 2 years ago through a video chat conversation that I had the delight to meet Ruti, and I was just, there's no words to describe it other than it was short of extraordinary, the way that she collected these materials and preserved them. Everything that she described, from the documentation that deals with the businesses, the communal life, the personal stories, the oral history, letters, photographs, everything that deals with the Jewish community, just illuminated how important it is and vital to preserve this history for future generations, and the richness of this history in relation to Cork City. And that made me realize that it's very, very important to safekeep it here at the museum so that it is accessible to the public, but it's also accessible for future generations, and hopefully that this will grow also into something much, much bigger. So to start with, what you see here on the screen is a catalogue meticulously compiled by Ruti, and she kindly shared it with us. So you're welcome to take a look at the screen and see all the different aspects of the work that went into it, and the families' names and the businesses and the stories. And if there's anything that interests you, we welcome you to reach out to us here at the museum. We'll be happy to make the catalogue accessible. There are 2 copies of the catalogue as we speak on that red table behind you there. You're welcome to take a look at them. But if you'd like to take a look at the physical material, or you'd like to access the digital material, please reach out to us in future, and we'll be happy to facilitate that access for you. So I just wanted to say that today we celebrate not only this launch of this really important material, but it's also an honor because it is the first digital repository archives here at the museum. So it's very much quite significant for us as well, and a huge stepping stone. So thank you for Ruti for making that possible. But I also want to think that I realize creating this archive has been a collaborative project with members of the community. So thank you for Cork Jewish community members and other members that have made these contributions. It would not have been possible without you. And thank you for the National Archives of Ireland for their expertise in digitization standards, as well as the Digital Repository of Ireland, who helped us create policies and protocols around digital repositories. I also want to thank the Oral History Network, as well as other members who made so many other contributions to this project. But a personal thank you for Ruti and for all the contributors on this archive here, because you breathe life into these documents, and they will always remind us of the history that is lived and not just merely archives. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Ruti for inviting me here today, and of course to the museum as well. It is really critical, I think, for us at this moment not to lose sight of the fact that people have in the past and will continue to come to our city, fleeing prosecution, looking for safety and refuge. And it is important that we are welcoming of them and that we do recognise and appreciate what they give to us, how they enrich our culture and our ways of living. And we have to keep that in mind at all times. Documenting the history and the cultural heritage of Jewish people who migrated here in times past is so important to ensure that the history is given an afterlife, particularly in the times we are living in. Otherwise, it is a history that is just lost to us. Unfortunately, in Ireland, we don't have a dedicated national sound archive that would allow us to listen to the voices of the past, as other countries do. However, we do have people like Ruti, and we do have the heritage specialists and the team here in the museum who recognise and value orality and also the critical aspects of our historic material culture. And they are finding the ways to keep it safe in many respects and to make it accessible to us. And for these persons, we have to be truly grateful. The digital archive will be a huge resource for the Jewish community, but it will also help us to understand Jewish history. For scholars and students, it'll be hugely important, particularly for those who are engaged in migration and mobility studies, cultural studies, Jewish studies, the study of religion, the study of Cork city life and how it has changed over time. When a digital archive is created, at the moment of its creation, we never possibly envisage all its potential, all the ways in which the material will be used in the future for reminiscence work, to stimulate art, music, creative practice. It will be a prompt to enable persons to discover their family history. It'll be used for TV documentaries. It will be used to enhance the school history education experience. The fact that it is digital is great because it will ensure in the foreseeable future that the material is made accessible beyond Cork, across Ireland, across Europe, and so on. I think this is what makes the creation of a digital archive so exciting. I'd like to congratulate Ruti today and to thank her for doing this work, which I've no doubt was demanding of her, but is so valuable for all of us. I will be more than delighted now that we have this great resource to make others aware of this impressive historic collection and to promote engagement with it in my roles as UCC educator, but more importantly as chair of the Oral History Network of Ireland. Thank you for listening.
And finally, last but certainly not least, I'd like to invite Ruti Lachs to the stage. Sorry, I'm being very dramatic.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Liz. 10 years ago this week, the shul, which is the Yiddish word for synagogue, the shul in Cork closed 10 years ago this week. And I was just reading my catalogue while I was sitting there, and I noticed that in 2016, this week, 10 years ago, Simon Yaffe wrote an article in the Jewish Telegraph, which is a North of England Jewish newspaper. He wrote an article about the closure of the synagogue, and 2 weeks ago he wrote an article about this launch, the same guy, and I was on the phone to him saying, how long have you been in this job? And he said, 20 years. And then, oh yeah, he was the guy that wrote that article. So there you go. 10 years ago, the shul closed on South Terrace. Many of you know the building. For many years before that, for decades, it had been difficult to get a minyan. A minyan is a group of 10 Jewish men over the age of 13, over bar mitzvah age, that are required for group prayers in Jewish tradition, in Orthodox Jewish tradition. So the community leader, Freddie Rosehill, Max Elian and others, they resorted to inviting Jewish students down from Dublin for the weekend, and they would stay with Jewish families here, and they would go to shul to help make up a minyan. So after 120, 130 years, the shul closed, and a year after that, I moved from Kerry to Cork. I was touring my one-woman show, and it's really why I moved. I'd been in Kerry for 30 years, and I had decided I needed more jazz, more theatre than you could get in Kerry, and Cork was the place for it. So I was touring this one-woman show, and one of the characters was my grandma. Audience members came up to me afterwards and said, was she real? Are you really Jewish? And was that language you sang in really Yiddish? And all over Cork, people approached me and said, oh, you're Jewish. Well, you know, there used to be a community here, and they would tell me stories about that community, and they'd say, but there's nobody here anymore, why did they leave? So in 2017, I started to research that former Jewish community, because I thought, people keep talking about it, I know nothing about it. During lockdown, COVID, by email and in person, I've been sent hundreds of family photos, I've been given access to memoirs, poems, essays, fact, fiction, some wonderful fiction in there, set in Cork in the 1940s. I found some really good audio. And I'm going to play you a piece of that audio now. This is Percy Diamond. He had a shop on Grand Parade, and he was also in, at least in 1920, but in other years as well. Sorry, Marion, I'm trying to not let that happen again. Oops. He also was a great singer. He was in the Cork Operatic Society, and then in the synagogue he would sometimes lead the prayers, lead the davening. When the chazan or the rabbi was away, Percy Diamond would lead the davening. Is that too loud? My correspondents, Simone Elian, you could listen to him all day. They loved it when he prayed in the shul. He had a fabulous voice. Those same prayers would have been sung in Liverpool, in Greenbank Shul, where we went every Shabbat, and in Orthodox shuls all over the world. My mum passed away about 12 days ago on the 31st of January, and we just got up from sitting Shiva on Monday. So this launch feels very timely. She had been ill, she was 94, she had a really happy life. And she didn't really know much about my research. She used to come and visit me in Ireland. I've been here 36 years. She came a few times a year and visited me in Kerry. By the time I moved to Cork, she was already going downhill with Alzheimer's. But when I went to visit her in London, I would tell her, and she'd be very excited about my research, and then she'd forget about it 5 minutes later, but that was okay because she was still excited, and we all need that from our mums and from others. So Yeah, so she's always been very encouraging of my projects, and not some of the more madcap ones, but most of things. But this one was special. It was great to be able to go home and tell her, I'm doing a Jewish project, Mum. It's not to do with environment or music. This is a Jewish project. So my parents were Orthodox. I'm not religious. I'm a secular Jew. But it's actually really that this now ties me to Jewish communities everywhere, because Cork Jews are spread all over the world.